Okay, so welcome everyone. This is a special event, a speaker presentation that is being conducted by the Our House to celebrate the last day of National Recovery Month 2021. So I think it's important to start off with discussing a little bit about why this is so important. So right before this meeting, I went and got some statistics to kind of conceptualize the whole concept of addiction. And the National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics says that 60% of people 12 and over in the past 30 days have abused a mood-altering substance. So that includes caffeine, tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, and any illicit substances, which I think is a pretty startling statistic, that literally in the past 30 days, 60% of people who are in middle school and up have inappropriately used a substance. Additionally, over 70,000 people a year die from accidental overdose, which makes this the leading cause of death in people under 45. And an additional 95,000 people a year die from alcohol-related issues. So whether that's car wrecks, overdoses, or medical issues made worse by alcohol use. So that sounds really horrible, right? A whole bunch of people dying, everybody misusing substances. But the whole purpose of Recovery Month is to make everyone aware that there is hope, that recovery is possible. And so additional study was done by Recovery Research Institute in 2020. And this found that 75% of people who at some point in their lives qualified for a substance use disorder eventually find recovery, which I think is a pretty beautiful number, right? 3/4 of people who struggle with the disease of addiction at some level find recovery. However, most people who get to recovery attempt treatment 5 times on average. And they found that most of the people that made it to that dreamland of recovery participated in treatment and or self-help groups. And some of the best results came from people who attended both. So I think it's really important that we hear those stories of people that are in recovery. I love the anonymity of the 12-step program, but sometimes it means that the people that have struggled with this stuff and are now living perfectly wonderful lives that you could never tell struggled with the disease of addiction go unnoticed. And so when you're in the throes of really struggling to stay sober from one day to the next, you might not realize that that level of recovery is possible. So this is definitely a battle worth fighting, and one that our agency has been fighting for a very long time and will continue to fight for as long as it still exists. So a little update on the schedule for tonight. So I'm going to have someone special introduce our speaker, and then our speaker will talk. And after that, like I said, we will stop the recording and we'll have a question and answer. You can feel free to send a chat if you have a question, or you can ask it aloud in the meeting. Either is possible. So I am now going to turn it over to Sydney.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hey everyone, my name is Sydney and I'm an alcoholic. I am Stephanie's sister, and Dinesh asked me to do this probably like 10 minutes before the meeting was set to start. So it's kind of, I'm a little bit nervous. So I wouldn't think that I'd be nervous that it's not an in-person meeting, but still the same deal. So so she asked me just to kind of share you know, some of the changes that I've seen and some of my experience. And in the almost 2 years that Stephanie has been sober, our whole relationship has changed 100%. You know, I got to a point while she was using that I was ready to just kind of sever the relationship ties, you know, because I wasn't sure, you know, I didn't feel safe in the relationship with her. And I had a child on the way. And, you know, I was prepared to keep my child safe at any cost and keep myself safe at any cost. And so there was a point in time where, I really had to contemplate my relationship with my own sister because of this disease. So, by the grace of God, something changed almost 2 years ago. And, Stephanie finally found some peace after multiple really scary incidences over, a couple of years. Overdoses. We weren't sure if she was going to be alive, from watching her withdraw in a hospital to getting phone calls from the Mattoon Police Department while I was at work. Just lots of really scary things. And today, our relationship is better than it ever has been. She's an active part of my life, my child's life, my boyfriend's life, of my family, our family, her family, which I think is super, super, super important because she was, she's got a little kid and a husband, and, they missed out on her for a long time and she missed out on them. And, but today she gets to rebuild those relationships because of, recovery and because of the program that we have. And I think in my opinion, if there's any example of what, recovery is, and what recovery can do, what the 12 steps can do in somebody's lives, they can quite literally bring them back from the grips of death and bring them to, a spiritual place of, our relationship and the person that she is today is just amazing. And I'm super, super grateful that she found recovery. And I'm really grateful that I get to hear her story today and get to be here for the journey going forward. So Stephanie, I love you and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. So that's all I have.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right, I'm Stephanie and I'm an addict. Woo, thanks for that, Sid. Me all teared up right from the get-go. I'm just really, I'm kind of nervous too. I hadn't been until just right up into this point, but I'm also excited to share with you guys because I'm really excited about recovery. And I don't know, I felt a calling since I've been clean, probably the last 6-7 months to try to help people. So this is a good place to start. So I guess I'll tell you a little bit about what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like now. Let's see, I was born into a home full of all kinds of addiction and alcoholism and chaos. My biological mother was a recovering addict, or actually she never really recovered, but she was in and out of the program most of my childhood. And my dad, I was never really around. I was born in Kentucky, and my grandmother took care of me until she passed away. I was just about to turn 7. And after that, things just really got crazy. Sandy, my biological mother, she was really, really sick, but she never really wanted me not to be with her. She drugged me everywhere she went. I mean, I would spend evenings as a little bitty kid in a car sitting outside her dealer's house, or multiple car wrecks with me in the car, and it was really scary. The things that I felt as a small child that I really didn't even begin to process until the last couple of years. Excuse me, sorry. I always felt really anxious, and I always felt the responsibility to her, like a really, 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 I don't know, like it's really codependency is how you describe it. But as a child, I didn't really know what it was. I just felt like that I had to take care of her, and she was in and out of treatment, and I would have to stay with whoever she could find, and it just really was not a good time. I can remember sitting in the car with her, and if you've ever been to Kentucky, it's not like it is here. The roads are really windy and narrow. There's a lot of hills. I can remember sitting on the console, I don't know, I guess back then you weren't too good to go through the windshield with the rest of the family. I mean, we weren't in car seats or booster seats or anything. So, but I can remember as a little bitty kid watching the road and looking at her and worrying if she saw the curb up ahead, and it just, I mean, it was exhausting. And so when I was about, I think 11 or 12, we moved to Illinois. And one of the first things I remember is we came into Mattoon, right by Huck's gas station, and we stopped there and we went inside, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm screwed. I mean, I'm screwed. There's alcohol, you know, in the gas station, and where we were from, it was a dry, so you had to go to a bootlegger. You would go to, like, you would know somebody, and they would literally have like a shed full of like booze, and mostly Fall City beer and early times whiskey. You know, I think those were the two options. So I can remember thinking, oh my gosh, how's she ever going to stay sober if you can just go into the gas station and buy alcohol? And so, you know, that was my first impression of Illinois. So yeah, when we moved here, she had been sober for a little bit, and she started drinking again, and she disappeared, and she'd been gone for 6-7 days. And I can remember riding my bike to my friend's house, listening to the scanner to see if you know, her name would come on or anything. And she finally showed back up, but it was just this constant, this stuff was happening all the time. And that was right around the time that I took my first drink. I was 12 years old. She had passed out with a bottle of Boone's Farm, and I took it and got an empty out of the trash and put it in front of her. And I drank that, and I remember, I will never forget the feeling that I got, you know, as my face started to get warm. And I feel like my chest loosened up, and finally I feel okay. And that's kind of where it all began for me. I drank pretty alcoholically from the get-go. I was very athletic and played a lot of sports, and I drank, and that's what I did. I mean, all through high school, I drank to get drunk, and I never really messed with any kind of drugs or anything because I was too good for that. You know, that's dirty. You don't do that. And that's what I thought. I always tried to be something that I wasn't, and I always tried to hide the fact that Sandy was this drunk. I was very embarrassed about it, and she was very, 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 very secretive about her life and what went on, and I was always forced to lie to relatives about, you know, that she wasn't drinking, and you just didn't tell what went on in the house. And so I kind of just, that became my way of coping and thinking, and You just don't talk about that stuff. And I learned that early on. So I would just, and of course I couldn't really process the feelings that I was feeling. I just didn't talk about it. I drank. And from the time I was 12 to 18, I received 12 minor consumptions. So, you know, it was really problematic. I had a scholarship to play basketball in college, and I decided I would go to Las Vegas with my friend, and I really just wanted to get away. And even though I keep reiterating this because this is important piece of information, I felt this like really sick responsibility to take care of Sandy, and she manipulated me with that. She would, you know, tell me things like, if you just need to stay here and you know, don't go anywhere. And to this day, I'm not really sure what all of that was about, but what it caused me was to feel guilty and torn all the time, you know, because I'm a teenager. I don't want to do that stuff. So I think my stint in Las Vegas lasted like 6 months. I mean, it wasn't good. We ended up back, and now there's no, you know, I'm not going to school at the moment, and there's nothing to do but to drink. And that's what we did. We hung around, we drank, we drove around in the country. And I started to do things like, if I couldn't get alcohol, I would drink perfume. And I can remember rubbing alcohol into a slice of bread, because I read somewhere that like the alcohol would stay in the bread and it would make it easier to get it in your system, and just things that really were not okay. I'm doing all these things, and I basically have no supervision. And I just continued to do that. I mean, nothing traumatic happened. You know, I got the minor consumptions, but I ended up, my friends started to say they thought I had a drinking problem, which was really offensive to me, because I felt like they were drinking when I was drinking, and I just really didn't appreciate that. So, but I ended up going to treatment. And I went to treatment, and I was in residential for 3 months and halfway for 3 months. So 6 months altogether. I turned 21 at the Hour House, and I got out and I stayed active. Back then, there wasn't a lot of like really young people around. So I had kind of been in and out of AA, and I've been around the program my whole life because Sandy had been in and out of AA my whole life. And so I became active in the program. We did, you know, went to conferences and hung out, and I hung out with recovering people, and you know, my life was pretty good. But looking back on it now, I can recognize some things that I never really truly had joy. I was always kind of bitey. I always had kind of an edge about me, and I was very insecure, and all these things that I didn't really recognize at that time. Things from my childhood bleeding into my relationships, because I really never wanted to talk too much about her. And as long as I didn't, I was okay. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Yeah, I stayed sober right at 10 years. Actually, when I was 22, I ended up with cancer. That was another thing. So this was another thing where I internalized this. Why does something always have to be wrong with me? Andy's a drunk. I have to be an alcoholic. But I internalized all these things, like then I felt embarrassed about it. So I didn't want to talk about that, and it was actually pretty bad cancer, and they didn't think I was going to live, and I was sick for maybe, I think, 5 years. I think total it was about 5 years. So I did all of that, and I stayed sober, but I didn't really do much of anything. I kind of stopped being involved going to meetings and stuff. And so, I mean, I still was praying, but it was starting to not be a daily thing. It was, oh, I forgot. And so things are starting to, I'm starting just to kind of do whatever and trying to control the people around me and push my will on them and make them act the way that I wanted. And all this stuff is starting to happen. And right around the 9-year mark, I meet my husband. Well, I worked with him, but I started dating my husband, and we dated 6 months and we got married really fast. We got married in 6 months. And I started to drink a little bit around that time. And by the time we got married, I was using Xanax. Conveniently, Sandy, my biological mother, had turned me on to Xanax, one of her favorite drugs. And because I was working third shift and I couldn't sleep, and there she is to help out. So I really liked that. So that quickly became a problem. And in the course of 3 months, I think I wrecked 4 or 5 cars. A lot of different people's cars. They weren't all just mine. And I mean, I was just pretty reckless. And honestly, I can't remember a lot of it because that's what Xanax does. I mean, you wake up with weird things in your pockets like shredded cheese and the objects that don't belong to you. I mean, that's what happens when you take Xanax, and it's all just kind of a blur. But I know things exploded, and anyways, he did end up marrying me by the grace of God. He did go ahead and marry me, and I pulled it together again. But I didn't start going to meetings, and I didn't want to be involved in the AA community because I think I really thought that I was better than them. That's what it boils down to. I'm going to church, and that's all I need. So we got married, and it was really a hard transition for me. We had his youngest boy living with us, and it was really hard for me to adjust, and we didn't really get along the greatest, and it just really was ugly, and I just wasn't a nice person. I just wasn't. Something was missing. When they say I'm not drinking or using, I mean, that was about it. I mean, I was going to church and stuff, but something was just missing in there. And I continued to do that, and I wanted to have a baby of my own. And we had, after some IVF, we had Jax in 2012, and, things were great. I fell into motherhood, and I was in love with my son, and he was never going to have the same life that I had. And I was just going to do all these wonderful things. And I got a great job, and I started traveling with work, and I was doing all these cool things, and I didn't want people to know that I was in recovery. And about this time, Sandy starts popping up again because she wants to see Jax and stuff. And so all this stuff starts coming up, and all these feelings, and I really just don't want to be around her at all. So I'm just nasty. And even my husband noticed that how different I'd become, like when she was around. And I really couldn't stand to look at her. She made me sick, but I wasn't resentful. I mean, that wasn't it. I mean, these are all the things that I thought. I've dealt with all that stuff. I just don't want to have anything to do with her. That was what I said about it. So I started traveling for work and managing hotels as an area manager. And I have this hotel that's kind of a nightmare child. And I hate going there. And I start to feel guilty about being away from my son. And I'm not doing anything for my recovery. I'm doing nothing. And I end up taking Xanax again. And I'm drinking when I'm there, but I'm controlling it because I'm only drinking when I'm in Jacksonville. So I'm thinking, maybe I figured this thing out. Maybe I'm not alcoholic. Maybe, you know, if I just do it when I'm there, it'll be okay. No one at home will know. But like my mom always knew, you know, not Sandy, my mom. She always knew. Like I can't hide it. But I'm trying real good, and it's starting to show in my work. I had several business trips where it just was ugly. You know, I was late to meetings because I'm in a Xanax coma. And so all this is beginning to be too much, and I'm really starting to fall apart. And Sandy's calling me, telling me she wants to go to counseling, family counseling. I'm like, I am 38 years old. Like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to deal with her. She had gotten breast cancer around this time too, so she's really playing that. You know, people, I had minimal contact with her for 10 years, but she's telling me, you know, people can't believe that I have breast cancer and my own daughter doesn't even come around. You know, I'm always the bad guy. She's always the victim. And that's how I felt. And it was just festering. So, I mean, you know, we were on vacation in Disney and the Mattoon police called me about her, and I'm just want to explode. So, we get back from that trip, and my husband and I are staying in the deck, and I get a phone call, and it's her, and she's telling me how she just wants to, you know, she had a gun, she'd end it all. And I'm like, stop using drugs. I'm giving her this great advice, you know, even though I'm nipping and taking Xanax and starting to unravel myself. And the last thing she said to me was if I had a gun, I'd end it all. And then I go on one last trip for work, and I had stepped down from my position and wasn't going to be traveling anymore. And I'm really going to try to get my crap together, you know, when I get back from this trip. And I get home on a Friday, and late Friday night, the next Saturday, I get a phone call from Sandy's neighbor, and she tells me that she's acting funny, and she's not sure if she's breathing. So I'm pissed. I just got mad, and I'm like, she's probably high. You know, and she's like, well, she's kind of, well, maybe she is. She's laying on the floor, and I'm just mad. You know, I'm sick of dealing with this crap. When's it going to end kind of stuff. And so I leave it at that. And I call someone else who had a family friend who had helped to take care of her, and talk to him about it. And he agrees with me that she's probably high, so we make the decision to not do anything. So the next day, I get a call that she's still in the same position. So we go over there, my husband and I and my son, and she's dead. And she'd been laying there so long that the blood had pulled up in her face. So instantly, I killed her. Is what I think. You know, I should have called 911. She probably died right after that. And that began a 2.5, close to 3 year crazy, full-blown relapse that brought me to where I am today. I don't think I really breathed a sober breath for probably until that happened June 17th of 2017. I think it was November 14th or 15th of 2019. So yeah, it was very difficult. I felt a lot of guilt because I had wished for a long time that she would just die. I mean, I said those things because it was just so painful to be around her, and to watch her be that way. So, yeah, it was a lot. So everything I think I ever felt as a child just came right back up, and I was off and running. After we got through the funeral stuff, that I was resentful that I had to do because I didn't want to pretend that she was, I mean, she had barely been a part of my life. I didn't call her I mean, she wasn't my mother. She gave birth to me, but there was all this stuff that went along with this relationship, all this nasty stuff that I honestly really had never dealt with. And so what do you do with that? You know, I mean, I had the coping skills of a 2-year-old, so so I did what I knew how to do, and I checked out, and I ended up with a bunch of money that she had, and I thought I'm gonna kill myself with this, you know. By February of the next year, or January of 2018, I overdosed on some fentanyl patches and Xanax and got my first DUI. Yeah, I woke up in the ambulance, and they really didn't know what was wrong because they said I didn't look like an addict, so they thought I was like diabetic or something. And luckily, when they moved me out of the car, they just happened to see the patch, so they gave me the Narcan then. And I ended up out of the hospital on a Narcan drip, and my sister was out there, and my mom, and my husband and my son, and they wouldn't let my son back, but it was horrible. I mean, you know, it's instant withdrawal. And I ended up in ICU, I think, for a day or two, and then they moved me up to the psych ward. And one thing that stands out to me about that was my little boy was 5 at the time. I think he just turned 5, and he said to my husband, "I just feel like I'm never going to see my mom again." And, you know, it was really hard because I know what that feels like as a child to not really be able to put into words what's going on, and maybe being so young you don't know it's drugs or whatever, but you know that your mother isn't right. And so I stayed up there for a few days, and the day that he picked me up, we went to get I was in his car when I got the DUI out of impound, and the police didn't search it. So there was a bunch of Xanax in there still, and I was high on the way home from the hospital. And by mid-February, I was on heroin. I had used heroin for the first time, and that was a whole new ball game. I mean, it was like nothing. Stephanie loves to check out and not feel things, and I had met my match. You know, I mean, I thought it was the best thing ever, and so from January of 2018 till November of 2019, I was Narcaned 7 times. I totaled 4 vehicles and got 4 DUIs. So it was a busy, you know, short amount of time. And the other 3 DUIs were right at the end. They were within 3 months of each other. So yeah, it was pretty crazy, and it was nasty for my family. And like I tried several things to quit. I cut my heroin with Xanax to try to wean myself off of heroin. I mean, that is completely insane. I mean, but to me, it was logical. It was a good idea. I was seeing a mental health counselor at LifeLinks, and he had me go to the pavilion. And you know, when I woke up there, I was actually overdosed when we got there. So I woke up there, I had no memory of agreeing to go there, and so I was mad and caused a big scene, and it was just some really nasty, ugly times. I blew through I think he said $37,000 on heroin, and I knew it was bad. And I think the worst part about it was I laid in my bedroom, and I can remember laying in here for days and days and realizing that the world's going on without me. You know, people are just living their lives without me because I'm basically just existing. And I would ask God to please just take away the withdrawal and I can quit, because you won't die from heroin withdrawal, but it's freaking horrible. I mean, it is horrible. And you know, just one little bit will take care of it. It's just a vicious cycle. And so in November of 2019, I again woke up in an ambulance, and they said that they had to give me Narcan and restart my heart. I had hit a semi, overdosed on the interstate, and that's kind of what set the ball in motion. I don't remember a lot. I know exactly a lot that went on those few days. I've kind of pieced it together, but I know my husband told me that I couldn't come home. He finally said, you know, you can't come home, and you need to go to treatment. And my mom, who works in treatment, was working it out to try to get me in residential. So I spent 8 days out at 3 West because I still had benzos in my system. And then I ended up going into the Hour House on a heavy dose of Thorazine. So I'm still checking out. I'm not feeling much of anything. I can remember barely being able to lift my legs, and walk. I just was so out of it. But I did not really, I did not want to feel the things that I was feeling. And I didn't want to think about maybe what my kid was feeling and what my husband, and I just didn't want to deal with it. And so I didn't want to not be on the Thorazine because I still wanted to check out. And so I get to the Hour House, and I'm just a complete jerk. I get this counselor that came and did like an assessment at 3 West with me, and I thought she was pretty cool and everything. But then I get to the Hour House, and she's not cool anymore, and she's trying to tell me things I don't want to hear, and I didn't like it, and I was not very nice. I was nasty. I said mean things, and I wouldn't get out of bed to participate in the exercise group, and I just wasn't very nice. And about day 14, I think, or so, I had a seizure there, and ended up having to go to the hospital. And then this just keeps happening. I don't remember how many that I had, but I ended up having to be medically discharged because I was still having seizures. And I ended up at Carl in the hospital. And when I came home, well, they said that they really wanted me to go to inpatient, but I did not want to go. But I said I would do outpatient, you know, if I could keep this counselor that I didn't like. So I ended up doing that, and I come home, and I'm high within days on Xanax, and I blacked out for, I think maybe I think it was the weekend. I came to on a Monday, once again with shredded cheese in my pocket. And I just felt awful. It didn't work for me. I felt I just felt like everything was heavy, and I just felt like I couldn't do it anymore, but I didn't want anybody to know that I used. Unfortunately, I attended an AA meeting that Friday night under the influence, and everybody already knew. But I wasn't going to be the one to tell them. So once again, I'm trying to build this. I'm going to pull it together on my own without being honest. I'm going to build this foundation on sand and hope that things work out this time. So I was seeing my counselor twice a week at this point because I was super sick. And I go in that Monday morning and see that there's a urine test on her desk. And I'm like, well, they gave me Xanax at the hospital. You know, I'm not ready to come completely clean. And she tells me, and they did give me Xanax at the hospital. I mean, you know, but I'm not really ready to come completely clean. On the way there, my mom had texted me and was like, I know you're using, and, you know, in her Tammy Clancy way, and her passive aggressive text message about it. And I'm like, crap. So I sort of came clean a little bit, not fully. So I go on and I have a sponsor at this time, sort of. I'm not really utilizing them. And I go to my groups, and it's Wednesday, and I laid on the couch and cried that whole night because I just felt like I can't do this anymore. I can't do it anymore. I mean, I just felt so defeated and just so scared. At this point, I'm facing, if you get 4 DUIs in Illinois, you're supposed to go to prison and never drive again. So I have that hanging over my head, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, but this is just not working. And I go to my session that Friday, and Melissa says to me, you know, she starts asking me about it, and, you know, I finally start to come to get a little bit honest about things. And she says, I remember saying to her, are you gonna bail on me now too? Because I have felt like, even though as an addict and active addiction, we kind of do this self-fulfilling prophecy where we are just impossible to be around, but we hurt so bad because everyone's abandoned us, you know. And so I kind of had a little bit of that going. And she said to me, no, I'm not going anywhere, but you have to be honest with me. And that's the day that everything changed. I started to try to get honest. I was scared. I didn't want to go to prison. I felt like if I'm gonna go, I would rather kill myself than do that. I mean, how selfish is that? I have this little boy at home, but I'm gonna kill myself before I go to prison. But that's just where I was. I was very sick and scared and desperate, and I was so afraid to even pray, because what if God's will for me is to go to prison? So what do? You know, so at this point, I just started to unpack a little bit at a time things, and I didn't know what to do. And literally, she had me, she told me when to go to bed, when to get up. I mean, I needed it simplified like that, you know, and together she helped me build a foundation, a solid foundation, not one built on lies about I used this time, you know, but I'm not going to tell anybody kind of thing, where I had done that before. And it was it was really hard. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, if you're in treatment, keep your butt there, because it is so hard to do that out there by yourself. I mean, with no kind of structure. I didn't know what I was doing, and that's pretty hard for someone like me to admit. So I just, it's so crazy thinking back on it now, because it seems like such a long time ago when really it wasn't. But slowly we just started working through things, and then COVID happened, and then there's no meetings, and everything's done online. And yeah, it was so crazy, because I'm back home. I have to try to be a parent. My kid is weird around me. He doesn't know if I'm going to be here when he gets home, and all that stuff's going on. And I had not even begun to peel the layer on how my addiction had affected my child. And so I'm in session one day, and Melissa says to me, "Are you ready to look at some of that?" And I'm like, ugh. So we start to talk about that, and I start to process through some of that stuff. And I slowly began to be able to pray. And, I didn't have a lot of emotion about things. I don't know if it was the effects of like the opiates and, and the effects it has on your body and stuff. But I didn't know that at the time, but I didn't really feel any joy. I was just miserable. I mean, I just was not happy. And, but I made that decision and that commitment and I wanted to be clean. I didn't want to do this anymore. And so I started with just not lying to my counselor. And so that meant I had to say some pretty embarrassing things. Like one time I snorted my antidepressant because I just wanted to snort something. Because, you missed the physical part, and she was so disappointed. It was horrible. It's like disappointing your child or your mother, it was horrible. But like, I just told her the truth. No matter how embarrassing it was, how crazy it made me sound, I just told the truth to that one person. And things just started to get easier. And I actually found a sponsor during COVID on a Zoom meeting, and she's in Philadelphia, right in the heart of the open air narcotics market. And she's really cool. And she believes in AA working, or 12-step programs working with treatment. And that's just so different from where I came from, because I kind of grew up in an Alcoholics Anonymous environment that was, this is the fixer for everything. The 12 steps will take care of you, and that is it. And she just has some different views about things, and it's just been really cool. And we started to work the steps, and I got to make some amends, and I was probably 9 months clean before I really felt any kind of joy. I started to find myself enjoying things. And that was when Melissa dropped another bomb on me and was like, hey, what about if this stuff with Sandy comes up again? And I'm like, but I'm doing so good. Why not? Why do I have to think about this stuff? And I was completely opposed to it, but EMDR was recommended to me. And finally I agreed to go to that. And it was such a huge blessing in my life, because I got to work through I think that most of us in recovery have some kind of trauma. And I had no idea how the trauma that I had went through as a child and as an adult child of an alcoholic affected me, and how it bled into my life. And I got to learn about that, and EMDR is really hard to explain how it works, but it does. And this is actually the first time that I've shared anything about my biological mom. But I wouldn't talk about it in any groups. I would talk about it with Melissa, but no one else. And so that's why it was a little bit emotional for me. So I apologize for that. But this is my story, not yours. So get over it. So I did that. I did 6 weeks of that, and I became this person that I didn't even recognize anymore. I started to feel different about things. I started to get this passion for the nightmare that I had been through. I was so grateful not to have to wear a diaper to try to go get drugs because I was in withdrawal anymore. I mean, it's just such a nightmare to be in active addiction, and especially to like heroin, because the withdrawals are so horrible and so nasty. I mean, I don't have to puke in a trash bag, so while I'm driving down the road. But things in court started to get going, and I ended up getting only 2 DUI convictions, which was just crazy. I mean, it's just amazing how things can work out when you just focus on doing the next right thing. And I just wanted to focus on getting clean, and I slowly started doing that. And I got to make some amends that I hadn't made to my family, to my mom, to my sister, to my husband, to my counselor that I was so nasty to in treatment. I got to make those amends, and I hadn't done that. And it wasn't just for things that happened in the 2 years that 2.5 years that I had relapsed. It was for things that had happened in the years before. And it's just been so freeing to be able to do that. And I just wasn't sure that I was ever going to feel
All right. Can you guys hear Stephanie if she talks through my phone now? So you have to talk, Stephanie.
Hear me?
Yeah, I think they can hear you based on the laughing. We're good. Like, can you hear Stephanie talk through my phone? And you're like, not just breathe. We need to. Right. Okay. So I think before a classic pandemic technology issue happened, you were talking about just doing the next right thing, and getting down to only 2 DUIs instead of 4, and then continuing to just do the thing that you're supposed to do day after day.
All right. So yeah, as I started to focus on just the things that I needed to do to stay clean, because I got to a point that I knew no matter what happened, whether it was prison or what, that I wanted to be clean. And so I focused on that, and I did the things that Melissa recommended to me and that my counselor recommended to me. And it's just the weirdest thing. All of a sudden my life started to get better. And, I started to feel like some of the things from my past, as I started to notice, and I was noticing things like that were like more of like trauma type triggers. We would work on them in EMDR, and it's just really weird. And I just started to feel better, and I started to feel like I had escaped disaster and I had skated death. And I started to feel grateful. And as I continued to try to, with my family, and especially here in my house with my husband and my son, it had to be more of like a living amends, and I had to be different. And I started to focus on more of not what I wanted to be, because but what I wanted to be. What kind of mother do I want to be? What kind of wife do I want to be? What kind of family member do I want to be? And that was a lot better than trying to not be like someone. And so things just got easier, and I felt genuinely happy for the first time in a long, long time, and grateful. And I had a desire to want to help people, and it just was a bumpy ride, because they talk about the pink cloud in recovery. I didn't get that until like 9 months in. And I mean, it just was a beautiful thing to look back on now, that God has always put the most amazing people in my life. No matter, even when I was a kid, there would be people that came into my life, and I just have always been extremely blessed with strong recovering people. I've always ended up what I think are the best counselors. And it's just really cool that how all that's happened. And I'm so grateful that people stuck around and allowed me to go on this ride and this journey in recovery. And it's just really cool, because I've always been ashamed of the fact that I am an addict. And I just don't feel that way anymore. I mean, I'm not going around saying, hey, I used to shoot up in the McDonald's bathroom with toilet water. But, I feel like one of the biggest disservices that recovery people do is we only talk to each other about it. And there's so much stigma around addiction, because people really only see the bad. They only see your name on the Mattoon Police Department page, or on the police app or mobile patrol, because we don't talk to other people as much in recovery, about recovery. And so I just decided that that's not going to be my story anymore, and I'm not going to hide in the shadows of this person that I used to be. When I came out of my heroin-induced coma, I had to deal with the death of my biological mother, and I had to grieve the loss of my career that I put so much emphasis on and value in, when really the things that I value most should have been happening in my home and in my family. And I had to grieve those things for the first time sober, and work through those things. And sometimes you just have to buckle up and trust the process. And I had to get to a point where I didn't know what the hell to do, and I didn't have all the answers, and my way wasn't working, and I had to get out of my own way and just maybe trust that God did put these people in my life, and that they could guide me, whether it was telling me what time to go to bed at night, what time to get up, and what to do in the morning. And I just really needed those things. And one of the things that we did when I decided to get honest was Melissa had me go through my phone and delete all my contacts. Now, she wouldn't have known if I left one in there, but for whatever reason, that I just made that commitment that I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to trust, and I did. And it cracks me up when I think about it now. I'm like, she wouldn't have even known. But it wasn't about that. It was about me and doing what I needed to do to stay clean, because I had no idea how to stay clean. I just didn't know. And I thought I did. And she would tell me, maybe you shouldn't hang around with those people. And I listened. And I'm so grateful that I did, because a lot of those people are dead or in jail. And I wasn't strong enough at that point in my recovery to be doing those things. And it's just so hard to do for people, for us. I mean, we're just so hard-headed and just so sneaky, and just to let all that stuff down and to be able to do that, I just, I'm at a place in my life today where I feel true, genuine joy. And I have moments where I look up at my son and my husband and I think, gosh, I'm blessed. I mean, and I don't know, I just have never really had those before. Like, I mean, God has just done so much for me and has put me in a position to where that now I can help others, and that's what I want to do, because I feel like if I can help one person get out of that nightmare that I was in, then all that stuff is worth it, you know. And really, I think that's all I got.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing, Stephanie. I know that it takes a lot of courage to be that vulnerable and to tell a whole bunch of people the stuff that at one point you were working really hard to hide. And I just want to honor that and thank you for the gift that you've given tonight.
Thank you.